Hey, hello, everybody. Happy Friday to you all, and welcome to Chattable, Hollywood Insights, Stories, and Overshares, brought to you by the team at Actors Comedy Studio. I am Gunnar Rohrbacher, founder of Actors Comedy Studio, and you can find me on social media at Gunnar the Comedy Coach in all places. So what exactly is Chattable? It's an informal conversation with some notable industry guests and friends of mine and friends of Actors Comedy Studio. So the first hour is going to be Q&A between me and our guest, and at hour mark we'll transition over, and if there's anything that I haven't covered or gotten to, we'll give you an opportunity to answer questions. So like all Zoom, we have the chat feature. You're welcome to comment and talk to each other as we go through the conversation. But the questions for the panelists are best placed in the question and answer box. So there's a separate box for that. I've been terrible at reminding us of that as we go. But without further ado, and not wasting another second, I'm very excited to announce today's guest, award-winning filmmaker, actor, and activist, Miss Kamal Lopez. Ta-da! We're getting there. I hear something. I see something. Hi, love. There's
Hi.
Do you have a fan or anything going on?
Did that help?
There's a low roar.
A low roar.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, let me see. Maybe I'm going to go back into the built-in microphone.
How's this? Is this less of a low roar?
I can't hear the hum now. You were better. You sounded, it was better audio on the other mic, to be honest.
You want the other mic back? Okay.
Yeah, I kind of do.
That's what Joel said.
That's her husband. Joel's a technical wizard.
Joel says there's no roar on his end, on the audience's end.
I think we got it now. There was at the beginning, lowering the fan. I think you did something there that helped. But this is better audio.
Thank
you.
God.
Look lovely too. Happy Friday to you. Good to see you. And thank you for having the conversation. So I want to jump right into it because there is a lot of ground I want to cover with you. But I would like to start wherever you like at the beginning, because you have amassed an impressive number of credits, my friend. Over 30 films, over 70 television shows. And just a resume, you know, as long as an elephant's trunk. How did you get started?
I started as a child actor in Venezuela. My family moved to Venezuela when I was very little. And growing up, I did theater when I was 7. I was in The Sound of Music at the Caracas, the British Caracas Theater Club. And I just wanted to act after that. And I actually forced my family to move to New York when I was 13. Because
I've heard of precocious children, but you forced your family to move.
I was like, you know what? I got to get going with my acting classes, guys. Time is running out. So we moved to New York, and I started at Herbert Berghoff Studios when I was 14. And I started on Sesame Street when I was 14. I did 2 seasons on Sesame Street. It was one of my first auditions. And and I just started working as a kid in New York City. And then my mom wouldn't let me not go to college because I had gotten into college early. And so at the same time as I had been offered a film with Robert De Niro.
I mean, I hear that all the time. I'm getting into college early, and I got to do this movie with Bob.
Yeah. Well, actually, my mom was like, "No, you're gonna go to college," and because I was well under age, you know, it wasn't really much of a debate.
Wow. You went to Yale.
I did. I got there very early, and Yeah, it was quite an experience.
An experience. So I believe you have a double major. Is that correct?
Yes, philosophy and theater studies.
Uh, so you're kind of still. So I don't. I feel like there's a big compromise there. Your parents were like, "Go to college," but I still feel like you were very much doing what was going to fulfill you. Yes.
Yeah, so the going to college thing, it was strange because my father actually was opposed to college. He thought college was for, and a Donald Trump word, My dad was a piece of work. He was like, college is for blankies, and if you're tough, you don't need to go to college. I didn't go to college, and look at me, I'm great. And my
Wow.
mama and I did want to go to college because I thought that Meryl Streep had gone to Yale. And so I was like, listen, whatever that lady's doing, I'm just going to do whatever the hell she's doing. So she went to Yale, I'm going to Yale. But she didn't. That's the thing. And I didn't find out till I was already there. She didn't go to Yale. She went to Yale Drama School, which is a completely different thing.
Oh.
Yeah, Yale College is difficult. It's difficult. It's not, I mean, not that drama school isn't difficult. I didn't go to drama school. I imagine it's quite difficult, but Yale College is not a bunch of acting classes, which
Uh,
are rock and roll classes or whatever classes I thought it was going to be.
well, that's very interesting. Um, so let's move on to this. So you worked with some very well-known actors. You already dropped one name, Bob De Niro, right at the top of that.
But I never met him. I never
Like,
met him.
well, there's time. Uh, you're going to. So did anybody that you worked with throughout your sterling career leave an impression, good or bad? And if so, who and why?
So, very much so. A lot of people left a lot of impressions, and I think that's just the nature of this business. You come up as a young actor and you look up to people, and they're so impressive. And some of them are just not great. Some of them are great, some of them are not great. I'll give you two greats. Christine Lottie, who I starred in a movie with called Crazy from the Heart. Her husband is Tommy Schlamme, who's now the head of the Directors Guild, along with many other things. And she said to me, and this is an important topic to address for young women, is that often when you're a young woman, you're going to be asked to take your clothes off and pretend to have sex with people. And you need to get very clear on how you feel about that. And even Gunnar in your class the other day, and I take master class with Gunnar because I think it's super important to stay in class always. But Gunnar was saying that sometimes actors have these issues about sexuality and it comes off, as sort of like pulling back and such. And I think it's more that actors haven't taken the time to figure out how they feel about it. Because once you do that, it's super simple. You know what I mean? Like, you're either like super comfortable, want to do it, love your body, think it's fun, think it's important, think it's part of the human experience, blah, 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 or some gradation of that, all the way to absolutely feel very uncomfortable, feel like it's exploitative, wherever you fall on that spectrum, as it were. As long as you know that, then when the thing presents itself, like what happened to me, which is, oh, by the way, today your scene, instead of being in the breakfast nook, is going to be in the bathroom. And by the way, you're taking a shower, and on this line, you'll exit the shower, and your robe's over there. Right? So these things will happen to you on a set. And if you know where you stand, super simple. If you don't, it becomes really painful because there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of guilting you and 5 producers coming over and going, God, we got to go. Like, what's a tit really at the end of the day? Come on. And you have to be clear in yourself one way or the other. Because and you can still compromise. You can decide, hey, you know what the hell, I'll do it. But you have to do it from a position of awareness, not coercion, and not feeling like, oh my God, I don't know, should I do it? You want to be clear. Okay, why not? I'll make that decision, but be in yourself, because if not, it's a very long and dark road down to degradation.
Well said, philosophy major. And, if I might, because, we both just are, we believe so strongly in education. I just want to piggyback off of that for a second, and then we're going to go back into that lane to talk about this moment of living through a pandemic. Because one of the things that I've been talking through also at ACS and in classes is people thinking through, actors thinking through how to take care of them on self, taking care of themselves on set during the time of a pandemic, because you can take the position to not work and stay isolated and stay home, but a lot of people aren't in the position to say no to work, and also a lot of people do want to work, but they want to work safely. So the conversation is that there's not a right or wrong answer that applies to everyone, but in the vein that you were just explaining about how to, that fan is back a little bit right into the mic, just to let whatever adjustment you made. Sorry,
I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, so I'll keep going. But in the same vein, I just think it's important to think through what's acceptable and not acceptable to you before you show up to duty. And then, and just even imagine it's not manifesting any negativity. It's just thinking through certain conditions and having some sense of how you'll respond before it happens. Because you brought up a really important point in how you were talking it through, which is whatever it is, it can be given to you beforehand, and then you have time to think about it and decide on your own while you're at home. But also, things can change suddenly on a set, whether it's a COVID testing guarantee, and then all of a sudden there is no COVID testing.
Right.
Or it seems odd that they'd go in the same hopper, but that's the world we're living in right now.
Right.
Because to me, it's important to empower anyone and everyone, as well as educate them on the craft itself. So we need to think things through and take care of ourselves.
Absolutely. And to get back to Christine Lottie, what she said to me is, don't ever let anybody pressure you into doing a nude scene or tell you that you will never work if you're a female and you don't expose your body. She said, I've never done nudity in my career, and I've worked all along. And, I think Glenn Close, I also worked with Glenn Close, who is an incredible person to work with. And again, these were women that have very strong senses of who they are. They're a lot of fun. Glenn Close is just a riot and a half, but they have integrity about themselves, right? And that's what gives you a long career, that gives you respect from your colleagues, and allows you to maintain a strong sense of self in a business that, honestly, there are a lot of sadists in this business. There are a lot of, which is why community is so important, why finding something like Actors Comedy Studio, or a place where you feel safe and where you are surrounded by like-minded people that are positive, that see art and what you're doing as valuable and not degraded. These are super important things for your psychological health and for your career.
Wow, well said. A couple more questions on this before we transition.
Kathleen Turner told me one thing that was super important.
Yeah, what'd she say?
She said, if there's ever a line that you really don't want them to cut, because they will cut you. Will cut you. They will cut all your shit. Always do it on a walk. Do it on a move. Do it on an action, because they cannot cut it. So wait to say the line that you really want and cross on that effing line. pick that water glass up on that effing line and they will not be able to cut it.
That's fantastic advice. I love Kathleen Turner.
She's
Practical
so
as
awesome.
day is long, and just awesome in all kinds of ways. Romancing the Stone changed my life when I was a kid. Um, you study, a lot of people study Meisner technique. You actually studied with Stanford Meisner. Am I correct about that?
For many years, I worked with Sandy. I went to Beckwith. I studied with him here in his place here in the Valley in LA, and then also did his director's lab. So I was in his master class for a long time, and yeah, I love me some Sandy. I got a picture of him looking down on me, and I'm hugging him, and yeah, he was like, yeah, I loved him. I'm glad I wasn't a male though in Sandy's class.
Why is that?
Because he was a very aggressive gay man. You know, a lot of acting teachers, you know, Gunnar, you're an excellent example of an exception to the rule that I've found that a lot of some of the great acting teachers also have sort of megalomaniacal tendencies or sort of egomaniacal tendencies where they need like harems of young adoring people. You don't have that at all, which is just great. But Sandy he didn't have the megalomaniacal part, but he would hit on the dudes like very very ferociously.
Ah,
Yeah,
um,
but not on the chicks at all. So I didn't. I mean, no offense, but I wasn't me too'd. It was the dudes that were me too'd.
understood. No, I like my business to be just business, and then
Yeah.
whatever else I need, it goes into another compartment. But thank you for that. You're so lovely. Then one just last question in this lane. You know, I think we all know, you know, there's no exact way or one right way to forge a career in the entertainment industry. It's so subjective and unique to each person. But you have a big body of work and longevity in your career. Is there anything looking inward that you can attribute just to yourself and speak to your personal story? You know, what are the traits or qualities that you embody that you think helped form a foundation for a long career?
So I think I mean, you know, it's not a career for sissies. It's not a career for people that don't have stick-to-itiveness or perseverance or determination. It's also not a career for people that don't have a purpose behind it. I don't think, unless they're very lucky. I've seen this also, where somebody is like a model that stumbles into something and then something happens and suddenly you're somewhere. But that's very rare and it also does not end well because there was no purpose behind it. So there you are, purposeless on the top of this heap that you didn't want to be in, and you just try and sabotage yourself out. And I've seen that multiple
Sorry,
times.
I'm biting my tongue as a comedian not to list the names of people that, okay, but we're not here to be snarky. So
No, but if you want to be an actor, there are definitive steps, and they are simply you just train really really hard, and I think you become the best that you can be, just the very best that you can be for your own joy and pleasure at being so great. And the greater and greater you are at whatever it is, if you want to be a mime, if you want to be a poet, if you want to be a dancer, whatever it is, just work on your thing and make it your thing and the best your thing ever. And that really is kind of like magnetic. It's interesting, but the more that you are able to be in yourself and enjoying yourself and having a good time doing whatever the hell you're doing, the more attractive you are. Whereas the more you're looking around to see if what you're doing is kind of what you guys are looking for, or maybe something else, or is it okay? That is actually has a foul odor, and it repels people. So, which is very liberating if you can absorb the idea that your quickest way to success is to just let it all go and be yourself as much as you possibly can and just be as good as you can be. That's very liberating because you don't have to look at anybody else. You don't have to look at agents and try and please them or casting directors and make them think you're great. Nobody has to think you're great except you. And you really have to think it though, and really just love it, and that will bring you work. And I know that because as a kid, I went on I took pictures and I thought I looked great. And then I went and I got the Ross reports. I found out the Ross reports and I opened it up and it said Abrams Artist, or no, Michael Amato Agency. It was the number one. And I looked it up. I got on the subway from Flatbush with my portfolio and I went to the building. I got on, went up to the elevator, got to the secretary. She opened the book and she said, "Oh, God, these won't do. You're going to have to get all new pictures." I leaned forward, slammed the book shut in her face, pulled it back and said, "Thank you very much for your time," and went right to the elevator. The whole office chased me down the hall and signed me on the spot. Know who you are. Don't let anybody tell you anything because nobody actually knows. That's the other thing. Nobody knows anything.
Wow, you just pulled the curtain back on that one. They don't. They know what they're magnetized to. That's such a great word. They're attracted to certainty. They're attracted to self-love, real self-love. And that does intersect with training because, once you become an actual master of something, that doesn't mean you don't have anything left to learn. We can always learn, but you can get to a point and train to a point where you go, I really do understand this craft. And I do really understand enough of the business to exist within it and make smart decisions within it. And when you work toward that plane, which is what I try to support my students to do as a teacher, not just learn comedy, but learn how to thrive within the infrastructure, then you're formidable. And, I never have and never will sell, I can teach you, or I can guarantee you work. My guarantee to my actors is I can teach you how to insert yourself into the conversation. I can teach you to work to a place where it's really hard to deny talking about you. And then they pick who they pick for reasons that belong to them. And that's fair. So
I just want to piggyback on this for a second, just to speak a little bit about what community does for an actor in a place like this. So for most of us, when we come to Hollywood, we have this idea that it's going to be like Hollywood. There's going to be a place or stuff or anything. And frankly, you get here, there's nothing. You can't find anybody. You're driving around for hours. You're just lost in an empty void trying to get an audition from who knows where. And so you feel always like you're outside, like there's got to be some Hollywood that you're not in, that you're not getting in there. And what you realize when you start to find a community of just people with similar purpose, people that, you may not exactly know who they are, but they've been around and they're working it. When you see the movie stars, you're looking at the very tip of Hollywood, the part that's visible from here to Timbuktu. But what Hollywood is, all of the people that are us, that are under that very thing, but that are holding it all, the whole system up. We're part of it. So you are Hollywood, is what I'm trying to say to you, is that whoever you are listening to this, if you are in the world of acting or writing or performing, and you're in this space where you're, trying to make it or whatever, you are Hollywood. So don't feel like you're outside, because I think it makes people feel smaller all the time. And what you need to do is feel bigger all the time. So anything that helps you feel bigger, you should go for. And anybody or anything that makes you feel smaller will hurt your career. Right, Gunnar?
Well said. Yeah, you reminded me of an analogy I often make. To me, my comedic, but I think fairly apt analogy to Hollywood is like a runaway freight train that has no final destination. So the training is to learn to run alongside the train fast enough that you can at some point jump into an open boxcar door and then start working it like now you're on
They're
the
selling
train.
your peanuts, man. As
So
you go
whatever
through
you're
the
gonna
car.
do, start doing it, but it doesn't make stops to let newcomers on. So
Yeah.
because you have to make a decision to insert yourself, and it includes a lot of words that you use. You speak so eloquently because you talk about purpose. Everybody needs and wants something from this, but that there's not a great response when you lead with need. However, if you start making an offer, which involves a review of what you have to give as a person, and then intersect that with solid training, you do have a chance. We know the chances are hard and we know they're risky, but actually the formula can be a lot simpler than people think. It just really takes introspection and a review of what you have to offer. And once you start flipping that paradigm, I see you nodding, I think we agree, then things can change for you.
Absolutely. And you're always just one role away from a fantastic career. And even if you're not on a TV show right now, how great a life are we having? Do you know what I mean?
I
How
do.
great a life are we having that we are recognizing the value of art and feeling and being a part of the human experience and exploring the human experience and then expressing it to other people that can't express themselves so they can recognize themselves and learn something. And, it's so beautiful. And if we just stay in that vein, I think that we have a lot to give the world and we're very valuable to the world. But but that's what I'm saying. There are a lot of weird people around us because we are very magnetic and we are very attractive and we are we show you what the world could be, what the future could be. And so for people that don't want that to happen, there's a lot of having to tell you that you're wrong, having to tell you your pictures aren't good enough, or you need to lose weight, or you're too old, or you're too dark, or you're too light, or whatever the hell you're too. They have absolutely, I don't know where they're pulling it from. They have no control over that decision, and it's meaningless, but it does show where they're at. And so you need to distance yourself from stuff like that because you're not to anything. You're exactly perfect, because there's nothing that can compare to you, right? You are exactly perfect for who you are. And the more you are, the more magnetic you are, and then the more people are going to try and tell you. I had phone calls, Gunnar, when I got to when I got to LA. I was a New York kid. I didn't wear makeup. I was, like 15 pounds overweight, and I was just curly headed, person. And I remember like getting home, and there were no answering machines or cell phones or anything. I just went to the gym, and then I went to Hugo's and I had like pasta mama or something.
Well,
I got home, there were several messages on my machine from my agent telling me never ever to be seen at Hugo's or anywhere in public like that again. I didn't have makeup on. They were getting calls. And so slowly, they took somebody that was just basically being, and they started to try and make me into something that wasn't me. And I played 8 Marias in 1 year. And I always had to talk like this. Yes, senor, please. Always. And it was demoralizing, and it went on, and it can be demoralizing. But again, things have really changed since then, hugely. And so you find yourselves at a renaissance in Hollywood, absolute renaissance. You can absolutely make it however you're presenting yourself, in whatever rainbow shade of humanity you appear, there's room for you. So it's a golden age, really.
There's always going to be difficulties, but I agree with you. It's there's opportunity like there's never been before. You also made me really hungry for pasta from Hugo's, because anybody who hasn't had that experience, I am so sorry for you. Um, okay,
There's
so I
pasta
want
mama, pasta papa, and pasta Emilia, which is with the avocado.
uh, you're missing one, pasta Victor.
What's that one?
It's got scrambled. Is the one with scrambled eggs in it.
They all have scrambled eggs.
Then it's Parmesan. I don't remember
One
now.
has meats and bacon. One just has eggs, and one has avocado.
Okay, it might have been the one with bacon. It's like, yeah, she's a vegetarian, but bacon does make everything better. We all know that. All right, so you are also a filmmaker and a producer. Your production company is Heroica Films, in affiliation with the Heroica Foundation. Can you talk to us about those?
Yeah, so as I said, I was starting to get really sick of these crappy parts and these stereotypical
No mas,
characters.
not a yes.
Yeah, maracas and si senor and or whatever the hell they wanted me to do. I was just like, come on, guys. And then I thought to myself, well, because I was so irritated by that show Kane
Uh-huh.
with Jimmy Smits, who's the best person you've ever would want to meet, the best guy. But you know, they would keep having these non-Latinos write these Latino shows, and I'd be like reading this going, I've never met anybody that did any of these weird things that they have us do. And finally, and the same with a lot of women's roles, I just felt like, who are these twits they've got running around just standing idly by? And I realized, you know what, you got to do it for yourself. Again, the train is going. If you want there to be a show about girls, you got to throw that volleyball into the open door and leap in and start, bouncing it or something, because their train is just about how much gas they can make, right? It's just about the gas. They don't really care about, it's just a numbers game. You got to prove to them that and so that's changing. You're seeing all of these things turning around, and I felt like I had to start writing stuff that I would want to be in, and creating material that I would be able to give jobs to people with. And being a feminist in 1994 with a company called Heroica Films was met with loud sucking derision. Being a feminist was not cool at all.
Yet she persisted. I know it's an interesting transition, and we're headed this direction from the 70s to just the 90s, 20 years later, when feminism really swelled in the 70s, to being really maligned when we hadn't achieved what many of the goals that we wanted to. So among other things, Heroica Films produced your documentary, Equal Means Equal. So let's pick up from there if we can.
Sure. So I realized that I found out in 2009 that men and women in the United States did not have equal rights under the law. And my mind was so blown. I was like, wait a minute, is that true? How can that be true? That's impossible. I mean, it is true. It's true. Women were not written into the Constitution, because at the time the Constitution was written, women were chattel or property of their fathers. When they married, they became property of their husbands. So they didn't have any sort of say in the matter. And they didn't change that. The only thing that changed was that in 1920 we achieved suffrage. So women achieved the right to vote. What they thought was then women would start voting for other things that would, and the first was the Equal Rights Amendment, which was written by Alice Paul in 1923 and failed to be ratified for many, 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 many decades until in 1972, when after a lot of work by millions of women, It was passed in both houses of Congress, was sent to the president, it was signed. And that's where the trouble started, because then it went back out to the states. The amendatory process is quite protracted, because they don't want it to be easy to change the foundational laws in the Constitution. So after Congress approves it, it then has to go to all 50 states, and they each have to run it through their congressional bodies, their House and Senate.
Their state
And so it just goes on and on and on. And you know, we got to 35 states by 1979.
1979.
And in 1979, when we need 38 to ratify an amendment, you need 3/4 of all of the states. And so when it wasn't achieved in 7 years, see, they put a deadline on ERA that they didn't put on other amendments, which is quite curious. They also didn't put it in the body of the amendment itself, but in the preamble, which didn't permit the states to vote on whether or not they wanted an amendment, which is why we're presently in the Supreme Court claiming that this is not a valid deadline. But and Jimmy Carter extended the deadline for 3 years in 1979. But by the time the second deadline came in 1982, they were still at 35 states. By this point, a lot of mobilization had happened, sort of, you know, and I like to say they just made a whole mini series about Phyllis effing Schlafly, who was, in my view, from my understanding, and I did one of the last interviews with her before she died. She was the original AstroTurf. And if the AstroTurf means it looks like grassroots, but it's plastic. It's paid for. It ain't coming from the grassroots. Don't tell me that a bunch of women swelled up from out of nowhere to say, we don't want equal rights. We just want to stay here. You know, come on.
It was manufactured and paid for.
It was bought and paid for, but she was a fascinating woman, very, very, very intelligent person. And really, her whole thing was about the nuclear arms race and the Russians and détente. She was very, very intelligent, very close with Reagan. Anyway, she found a hook, just like her protege, that Anne, whatever her name is, that horrible Coulter. That's her protege. They're just looking for a hook, like Dennis Miller. There's too many liberals in Hollywood. Well, let me be the right-wing guy because I get more airtime. That's what Phyllis Schlafly was. She built her.
Just so we keep all the campers in the same canoe, because this is great. So, but we're jumping time a little bit. So
okay.
Going back to.
So in 1982, the deadline came and went for ERA for those people that believed that such a deadline could be imposed on half of the population. Those people do not include me, who came around in 2009 and said, why'd you stop? Let's get to 38. There's only one sentence about it in the Constitution. It says, upon the ratification of 3/4 of the state, the amendment shall be adopted. It doesn't say, then we have to go ask Donald Trump if we're going to adopt it, or Bill Barr, or anybody else. It just says it's adopted. The Archivist of the United States, so then, okay, enter the dragon. Enter 2009, I find this out, and I'm like, what the hell? This is ridiculous. I tell 10 of my friends, they're all like, you're wrong. We're fine. We're good. We have equal rights. We have equal pay. I'm like, no, dude, you don't get it. This is like totally we don't have it.
We actually don't.
We don't. And no one would believe me. No one believed me. And I was like running around to schools and I didn't know what to do. I was just like yelling. I'd go and put a box out and be like, women are not equal. And people would be like, okay, lady, you know. And then finally I went to this guy in San Francisco and said, you know, you better make a movie about this. It seems like you're about to have a brain aneurysm. Get a bus and start traveling and setting up your soapbox in village to village and we'll follow. It'll be a story. And I was like, all right. And so I was like, whatever, man, whatever it takes. And I tried to do PSAs, fast, funny, famous. I made I wrote a few of them, but it never materialized. And then I finally did a Kickstarter for the documentary because I couldn't get anybody to want to pay for a movie about women's rights or where women stood or looking at women. Nobody could give two craps. And so we did the movie. It took about a decade. I looked at 26 areas of society where I wondered whether having equal rights in the Constitution would have any effect. And in every single area, Gunnar, every single area, it would improve matters in every area.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think is so great about this, and if you all haven't seen it, they've been posting in the comments, but it streams on Amazon. There are other places you can watch it, but if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it easily and instantly there. But you weave together things that could seem disparate and say, no, not really. They're all connected because it has to do with equal justice under the law, service in our judicial system. It has to do with equal pay, certainly, and equal treatment.
It's the air we breathe, Gunnar.
It's right.
The air we breathe. It's in every law. It's part of, it's in the same way that racism is institutionalized in this country, that so many of our systems were built on the backs of slaves that we just sort of randomly don't remember. Similarly, the sexism, understand that women do 100 million hours a year, American women, in unpaid labor. Now, if that stopped, our economy would crash. This is labor of taking care of children, the elderly, the ill, whatever, doing the things that you don't get paid for. That's 100 million hours of unpaid labor. At the same time, we're 47% of the workforce now. So we're doing the 100 million hours and we're 47% of the workforce. And on top of it, we're 70% of the working poor, because all of those tip jobs, those minimum wage shit jobs, are a pink collar ghetto. It's maximum women. It's the childcare. It's the $8 jobs. It's the jobs where you have to have three jobs just to make one wage. Those are vastly overpopulated by women. So all of these things come together and make it pretty much, and this is what broke my heart, is looking at this, is how amazingly competent women are, that they manage to somehow navigate this crazy system with no child care, with no maternity care, with no sick leave, with Walmart telling them within 2 weeks, we're moving you to another town. We don't give a shit. Oh, well, you can't be promoted if you can't move within 2 weeks, stuff like that. How they even pull it off, I can't even. And so my hat is off to American women. And what I say to them is, I want you to understand, if you feel less than, if you feel like, gosh, I can never get ahead, I work so hard and I can never get ahead, let me tell you, if the playing field was level, you'd be killing it. You'd be winning. You'd be so far ahead of everybody else. You just don't realize how many stones are around your ankles, and you're still running up that hill. And that's what drives me every day, is to see women internalize and think that they're less than when they're actually super effing human.
And there are deep systemic problems that are ingrained that a lot of people don't even know that are shackling them. I want to just, and I'm keeping an eye on the clock because I have so much I want to cover with you, Kamala. So if we can just do this part quickly to put us up to speed where we are with the ERA, because we got, so.
Okay, so in 2016, we released the film Equal Means Equal, and we started to do screenings across the nation in all the unratified states, and we partnered with the League of Women Voters and the YWCA and over 250 women's groups in the field. And we started campaigns in the states to ratify that state.
Because we needed 3 more.
We needed 3 more since 1982, and no one had decided to, because they all bought into that deadline. So the first state to fall was Nevada, and Senator Patricia Spearman led that charge, and this is now Nevada's the first ever majority female legislature in our country, And also, if you see where they've allocated funds and how Republicans and Democrats manage to work across the aisles, it's a study in what happens when there are more women in a space. The second state to go was Illinois, where we had to keep going back to Chicago. We did all kinds of things where we sent out buses to gather people from other parts of the state and bring them in to vote. And we managed, and they had tried for 25 years, every year, to pass ERA. And we came to town and we got it done.
In the state of Illinois.
In the state of Illinois.
That's 2018, correct?
That was 2018.
So
and
that only leaves one state.
And each time the archivist was writing it in, which is his job. Oh, they got another one. Oh, they got another one. Now, Virginia, we had been going back year after year because the guys in charge there were really a piece of work. I mean, that was the seat of the Confederacy, as you know. It's where the racially gerrymandered maps were drawn. It's a highly problematic state when it comes to race and all of it. So we decided after 4 years of beating our heads against the wall, we gonna have to move to Virginia.
You physically moved to Virginia.
Physically moved, got a house in a fucking peanut farm, Virginia, and just went about flipping all those seats. Just barber shops and laundromats and Walmart parking lots and Friday night football games and hosting barbecues and going to churches and doing whatever it took, man. I ruined my wrist from handing out flyers, like whatever it took to explain to them, because most African Americans had never voted because there was pointless to vote. The maps were it was so ridiculous. And these were people that were beaten down and that had never been given any kind of political voice, and that the discrimination was so strong that the street where we got our house, the Airbnb house we rented, all of our guests that came over were scared to come because they had never been allowed on that street. I was like, what do you mean allowed on the street? I'm from New York. I do not understand. What do you mean allowed on the street? There was a thing that they had where there were blocks that were black blocks and blocks that were white blocks, and you could not go. And so it was so mind-blowing. There was a swimming pool that the people in the town filled with cement when the judge said that black people had to be allowed to also swim there. That's how disgusting the racism was. All we did was connect to them and say, look, the Equal Rights Amendment, right now, African American women that are a lot of the heads of households are making 68 cents on the dollar. We need that money. We need that. The African American women delivered. They are the political mainstay of the Democratic Party. They don't get enough respect. They don't get enough support. And the Equal Rights Amendment is a real way to support women of color, I will say to any person in the DNC that happens to be listening. But these people, once they realize, wait a minute, our vote is going to count because the maps are thrown out by the Supreme Court this year. We would lead with that. And B, we will, the women will get equal rights and you'll get equal pay, and we'll see about this domestic violence and all this stuff. And then C, if you don't have a way to get there, we will drive your ass to the poll. We will drive. We did whatever it took, Gunnar, and we flipped 6 seats. And we flipped 6 seats, and it was a blue wave in Virginia, and they were shocked. And we said to them, first vote is ERA. We do not want to hear. We put you here, and we need first vote ERA, because you know how it goes, Gunnar. They'll do the, gun control and this thing and that thing, and no, first vote. And we held their feet to the fire. I went back to Virginia for the month of January to make sure that they were going to do it. They did it. We got our 38th state, and what happened? The archivist wouldn't write it in. Why? Because he got scared, and he called his boss, who's Bill Barr, and Bill Barr was called his boss, and then wrote this long tome, scared the crap out of the archivist, and said, no, you shouldn't write it down. Because as soon as he, certifies it, it's done. We're equal. And they stopped it. So we had to sue them immediately. So now we're in a battle. We just lost our attempt to go to the Supreme Court. We tried to go from our first court to right to the Supreme Court, just get it over with. But they punted for whatever reason. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. We all need to be very, very, very aware about the Supreme Court and what the ramifications are of going 6-3 in the direction they're trying to go, because it's not even like before where it's like they might take away abortion rights. The end game of that court, should this woman be put on it, the end game is eliminate birth control. She said eliminate in vitro fertilization, eliminate any sort of scientific research that verges towards what they see as impinging on the fetus. It's just a very extreme view that is not in keeping with the American public whatsoever, which is astonishing to me, is that we're going to be ruled by people that do not agree with our values and principles at all. And we just can't let that happen, Gunnar.
I'm with you, and it's why I've been so looking forward to this conversation. And look, we can move this story forward however many people at a time, but we have got to keep talking about it because it's essential, because equality for women is freedom for everyone else. And so the focus, yes, is on equality and justice for women, for Black Lives Matter, but people really need to understand the liberation and freedom that comes to everyone once equality is given to everyone else. Because women making less and having more expected of them, the whole family suffers. You know, we are one of the only industrialized nations that doesn't consider family leave and child care any kind of right. They just expect women to knock out the kids and keep on working away with no time off. And not even a thanks. All right, I've got to get this out.
At a very young age, I looked at that and go, that doesn't look like fun to me, somehow.
So, in case anybody missed this, I don't want this to be lost. When you did say January, so
January 27th, we won equality for all Americans under the Constitution. And now this year.
This
right
just
now.
Everybody,
and
right.
then as a gift to myself, I said, I'm going to go get into some comedy and stop with this. And I said, I'm going to look comedy. And then there, Gunnar and Joel and Gunnar. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to Gunnar. And then pandemic.
Well, none of this is stopping us from anything.
Not at all.
I didn't want it to be lost. I think a lot of people don't understand that the ERA in its original form is nearly 100 years old. That's what I wanted to underscore. That we just got the third, so just no one's lost on our kind of history lesson conversation. You need 38 states to ratify and amend the Constitution of the United States. We just got the 38th state this year, in large part, not exclusively, but in large part because this person that I am talking to right now. And that is just an enormous effing deal. And congratulations and kudos and thank you for all that hard work. But it's
so welcome. And by the way, just to the actors, I just want to say, it's the same with the acting. It's just perseverance, right? And purpose.
So it's easy to talk about, just equality and rights for all in the broadest scope. But I have a specific question. I'm sure you have a take on it. Why does it matter that because there certainly are state rights and there are laws on the books protecting women's rights and others' rights. Why does it matter that there is no national cohesive protection of women's rights?
So basically, there's a hierarchy of our laws, starting with the smallest ones, going to, statutes, acts, so forth, all the way to the Constitution. The Constitution is the bedrock law. When you go to the Supreme Court, and here's an example. Jessica Gonzalez-Lanahan had a restraining order against her husband, and yet he was able to go to her house, take her 3 kids, hold them all day, despite her calling the police 7 times, going to the police physically twice. They did nothing to enforce that mandatory restraining order. Her kids were killed. He shot them all in the head. He shot himself in the head. It was a horrible thing.
He actually went to the police station and started shooting there.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. And then
he went to the police station. He went and bought a gun, killed all his little children, drove to the police station, started killing police officers, and they killed him. She sued the police department saying, why didn't you enforce my restraining? I have a restraining order. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said that women are not guaranteed equal protections, that the police department had discretion on deciding which orders to enforce and which not, which means they're not mandatory, right? Because mandatory means you got to do it. So there she was, left by the end court in this country telling her she had no right to have a restraining order enforced. She took it to the International Human Rights Court, and the International Court found that the United States is violating the human rights of its women and girls as a class. Now, the United States doesn't give two shits what the International Court thinks, because they are the biggest bully and they don't care. But the reality is the rest of the world looks at this and goes, that's not right. So that's why, because if you take something like the Equal Protection Clause, well, no, let's get out of the Constitution and take something like the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination. It's still the enforcement has no teeth because it's not backed by the government. It's just there, and if Walmart wants to follow it, great. If they don't, what they'll do is they'll drag your ass through court for 30 years. They'll run up your lawyer bill, and they've got billions of dollars. So where's that? Where's the justice? You know, we need the state to say, you know what? Stop it. We think these people are equal to the other people. By abdicating that position, it allows all these loopholes to be exploited by bad actors, which is essentially the capitalist system, applauds and promotes bad actors.
Well, in this, preventing an amendment which would make it a national a protection as opposed to state by state protection, they're hiding. And I see the parallel in the way our current president handled managing the pandemic by saying it's not my responsible, it's a state by state thing. And it's the state by state protections for certain things is just an absurd way to hide behind not taking any responsibility or disabling, in this case, protections for Americans. Am I right? I see you now.
Absolutely. That's what they're going to try and do by undermining Roe v. Wade. They're not going to, they keep saying, oh, we're not going to take abortion away. We're just going to leave it to the states. And again, from being in these states and seeing that these states are run by a cabal of older white dudes that have no desire to see any progress go in any direction because they've got the lock on all this money and power. If the national government doesn't want to step in, then that means the women in Alabama, Louisiana, Georgia, all throughout the South are going to be further oppressed, further discriminated against. Their lives are going to be made even harder and more impoverished than they already are. And and I think it's obnoxious for women in the C-suite or wherever the hell they are in San Francisco or New York or whatever, or Connecticut, to be like, oh my God, well, I guess I'll just fly to New York if I need an abortion. That's not cool. That's not how it works. Like, we have a lot of sisters out there that have no voice whatsoever, that are presently being abused every day. We have 5 women dying every day in this country at the hands of an intimate partner or spouse. So, we need to help those women.
I need to transition in a minute or two, but I still have so many questions. Can you help me understand why some women would stand in the way of the progress for women more broadly?
So I'll give you an example. Let's say that for 100 years, the only way that you survived was to be really nice to a very large brown bear that had you on a leash. And throughout the years, like, he could bring you apples, but if you stepped out of line, he could just knock your block right off. And so we have women, and especially white women, the kept women, the ones that have been on a pedestal, that are really nervous about the idea of stepping out of that position, because a lot of women are traumatized by the bears. There are a lot of bears. And so I think there are some women that make the calculation, and I've seen this. It's like, I'm going to ally myself with the fucking raiders. I'm not going to go play badminton with you people. I'll get eaten alive. So those are calculations that women make, that, you know what, I'm saving my ass. I'm going to stick with this guy and save my ass. And there's nothing wrong with it. I really do not judge any choice any women make, because they're not making choices based on having a level playing field. They're making survival choices, and it's not for me to say what those should be.
There is a colloquial phrase that we have now that we did not have when you and I were kids. And I'm going to just say it and define it, and then I have a question. And that phrase is rape culture, the meaning of which is a culture in which sexual violence is treated as the norm and victims are blamed for their own assault. Is rape culture pervasive in America?
The United States is the third most dangerous country in the world for sexual violence, tied with Syria. This is a UN study that came out a year and a half ago. We have, it's not necessarily even a rape culture. What it is an impunity culture, meaning that nothing will happen to you. Because if you rape people, nothing will really happen to you. Chances are. So from what I learned of doing a lot of research, I had over an hour and a half just on this segment alone. Freshman girls have a 1 in 3 chance of being raped in that 1 year. So it's safer for you to not send your girls to college. Interesting, right?
Interesting.
Okay. Another thing is, I spoke to a lot of the women that work in the sexual assault response teams in the hospitals. They think that the statistic is more like 1 out of every 2 women will experience a sexual assault or some kind of a violent sexual incident in her lifetime. So why, okay, and then the other statistic is that only 1% of rapists will ever spend 1 night in prison. So you put those two together. You have 161 million people, of which half of them are having some kind of terrifying sexual assault. And then you have complete and utter impunity. These guys just run around, and maybe 1 out of 100 does a night in jail. That's a really excellent way to keep women, in a band of terror, in a band of anxiety, in a band of sort of propitiation, as it were. Let me get myself a strong man, let me get myself situated, because this is a dangerous place to be.
When women are raped, and it's reported, they're given a rape kit. Do the police and the justice system collectively work to follow through on the rape kits that are turned in annually?
No, they do not. They do not process them. And, there have been multiple cases where these guys, because one of the things you find out is that most men do not rape. Most men do not rape. But the ones that do, they do it a lot. Right? So it's a very small group of really, they're just doing it. They're out there, they're doing it. So if you did process those things, you'd find you'd find these guys just coming up over and over again, but they don't do that. My lawyer doesn't like the whole mixing of the looking at this from the point of view of criminal justice, because she wants to keep this in the space of, for instance, rape is a hate crime. Would you agree?
Easily.
Okay, so women are not part of hate crime legislations because of ERA. Because women are not included in those protected classes. That's one of the very important reasons why we need ERA. Sexual orientation is protected, religious, what country you come from, etc., your race. So, for instance, if you are raped as a black woman, and the guys are like, you black woman, that's why we're raping you, that's a hate crime. Same rape, same guys, white woman? No. That's the problem. Because we know that this is a hate crime. This is not about men just getting too horny, right? This is like it's a violent act to disturb us a lot.
Oh, my goodness. If anyone watching, is feeling helpless or hopeless about this because it's so pervasive, broad, and overwhelming, do you have any thoughts on what they could do now, today, or tomorrow that is an actionable step that makes a contribution to solution?
Yes, well, I would first of all like to ask anybody listening to please sign up at equalmeansequal.org and become a member, which is free, and all it means is I'll send you information about what is going on. I would appreciate that because it's very important to tell people what's going on. Another very important thing that you can do is vote, because a lot of these, and vote up and down ballot. A lot of actors may be from other states. If you can vote in those other states, that would be great. And make sure that the congressperson or even the local city council person is pro-equality. And that needs to be asked of them. And if anybody wants from me, I have an equality pledge package which we give to legislators and make them sign it before we vote for them. And then when later it comes up, we're like, you signed it, you better vote for it, kind of thing. And then I also would say that I recently learned that Anita Hill has been hired by Hollywood to run a commission. And this commission is supposed to be actually taking steps to deal with sexual harassment in our industry. The first part was she did a survey, and she found out that over 65% of people in our industry do not believe that anything will happen to anybody that is harassing them if they're more powerful. So immediately she's trying to set up a system of how you would address that, like an anonymous line and all kinds of things. So I would say to anybody, any actors that want to be a part of changing Hollywood and creating a new system, to look into Anita Hill's new commission. I'm sure they're looking for help there, and just make your voice known. I think that SAG starting this sexual coach person is very helpful, because I've had experiences where actors have really, been inappropriate in the middle of a scene. And so I always was kind of disturbed that, like, I don't want to get the herps, is somebody checking? Like, what the hell, man? So I really appreciate more of that. I think we've got to get involved as actors. We're the ones having to wear these merkins and having to do all this stuff. We should be involved with that. And we should make sure that, the thing that happened to me with the coming out of the shower thing, that's not allowed. You can't just spring it on somebody that you suddenly want them to take their clothes off or whatever. Hey, now this week you're going to be having, the actor playing your husband, he's gone. The writers didn't like him. From now on, every week you'll have a new guest actor that you have to have a sex scene with. And then that can happen to you when you've already contracted to the show. I know somebody that happened to. So, and I mean, we need to get involved with that.
I love the way that you brought this back to this business. I have one last question, and I edited out dozens. But just so we really understand where we are in this moment right now, just to follow up, because you have made it very clear. So we have the 38 states to pass the ERA. I understand that it's being held up by the archivist, but I also want to understand the deadlines that impose. So the last one that Carter gave, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the 3 years addition to 1982. And I understand that it was artificially created and imposed and not imposed.
Here's what happened since then. In 1994, they ratified the 27th Amendment, which had to do with congressional pay. You know how long it took them to do that one? 203 years. So that's where women were like, wait a minute, we got 7 years. Y'all got 203 years? So that there was a case called Dillon versus Gloss that said that an amendment had to be ratified in a the issue was contemporaneity, meaning if it started in 1902 and doesn't get done till 2020, is that contemporaneous enough? Do states that wanted it before still want it? Are the people still the same? What is the statute of limitations for contemporaneity? And that argument was completely dissolved in 1994 by the adoption of the 27th. In my view, you cannot possibly say that amendment has to be contemporaneous and then say 204 years and then tell me that I don't have 7 years to give something that is not their right to give or take, because all humans are equal. This is a human and civil rights issue, period, end of story, and there is no statute of limitations on my human rights. Right?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I just wanted to understand totally. That's the education I really wanted, because I have stayed abreast of most of this, to be honest with you. But those were really specific details that are interesting. So it's kind of I understand you find it irrelevant, but it could be an issue that there was this deadline, and it's also an issue that the frickin' archivist of the last state.
He said he'll do it if we give him a court order. If he gets a court order, he'll do it. So we're going to get him a court order, and then he's going to do it.
This isn't good for my blood pressure at all.
I know.
But we have.
But we cannot have Amy Coney, what's her face, in there, because she will torpedo the hell out of this.
She's going to be in there, though. Oh my gosh.
She cannot be in there. And then the other thing is that we have something called SJ Res 6, which is Senate Joint Resolution 6. Nancy Pelosi passed a bill last year to eliminate the deadline and remove it, which Congress made the deadline. I made it, I can take it away. So she's like, F it, gone. Now the Senate with Turtle Face is not going to do it. So if we get rid of Turtle and the rest of them, then SJ Res is an easy piece. Then they just say, bye-bye, deadline, poof, gone. Then we ratify. But then the other side's going to go, how can you make a deadline go poof, gone? And we'll be back in the Supreme Court. But by then, they're going to try and have to take it from us, which is fine with me. It's much easier to hold on to something than it is to get it.
Okay, so if you're, I won't ask for any specific labels, any watchers and listeners, but if you're in any version of the blue team at all, you need to start thinking about who comprises the Senate and who comprises the Supreme Court the way the red team has for the last 40 years. Because this has been a straight line agenda and mission to make this conversation, unfortunately, a reality, if you understand my meaning. They've been gunning for the elimination of what should also be just natural evolution. One of the reasons I'm getting it just gets my ire up is not only does it get my activist spine straight up and down when anybody's treated unequally, but it truly is putting your boot on the neck of natural evolution. We should evolve into, if we're going to pay taxes, some of it should come back to us in the form of care for all of our families, and care for us the way we live our life on a typical day. And it's not. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to just have a heart out on that, because I could go till midnight talking to you about this. I love your brain, and I'm so grateful for the work you've done, because it benefits us all. It's not just about taking care of women. Taking care of all of us is going to be a benefit back to everyone. So I have a speed round. I know you've seen some of these, maybe even all of them. I thank you for all your support. But what's coming up now is the game show portion.
Okay, I don't remember what they were, so I'm gonna be like a fresh person.
Fantastic, and that's because I'm not memorable. So
No, you're very memorable.
I'm teasing. So it's stimulus response. We're just gonna go.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
First thing that comes to your brain, I know, is just find out who you really are, Kamala. Who are you really? All right. First question: what does comedy mean to you?
Happy.
If you could change one thing, only one thing, about the way this industry works, what would it be?
Kind.
Do you think of yourself as successful?
Yes.
What's a funny word?
Nugget.
Every funny word makes me laugh. Okay, it gets me every time. What's more important, self-expression or true respect from your peers?
Self-expression.
Is there anyone not invited to your funeral?
No.
Is there anything, in your opinion, every human being on the planet has a responsibility to do?
Absolutely.
What is it?
Care.
I just distilled another hours long conversation into one word. All right, that was hopefully painless. Thank you. So now I've talked to you a whole 20 minutes longer than I've talked to people, but hopefully we got all the points and where we're at with this. It's just this historic moment, and I think people just don't know about it. It's just been so under reported.
But that's on purpose. I found out some weird things just recently that were really, and they don't go along with my sunny disposition and trusting nature. But I did find out that from 3 separate people, one a Washington, D.C. reporter, investigative journalist, another one yesterday from another reporter that was interviewing me, and it interviewed me 4 years ago when this process started, and then Senator Russ Feingold. People have been calling people up and telling them not to talk about what I'm doing, literally. And I couldn't even believe that. Who wants to waste their time doing that? But apparently a lot of people. So there's something called being blacklisted, and apparently, and not Hollywood blacklisted. This is, I guess, I don't know, politically blacklisted. I don't have a.
I think the topic is blacklisted.
The topic.
It just goes to how much is going to have to change. It all boils down to finances, and that corporations are treated as people under our Constitution, and people are not. Because once this does get over the line, and it will get over the line, a whole series of laws need to be rewritten, and the corporate infrastructure absolutely has to change. And what our Supreme Court keeps trying to do is take away our power to find any justice if our rights are infringed upon through the court system, quite literally at all. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're not. It's really sad. We're really not a democracy anymore. We're certainly not a representational democracy. But what my concern is that we are a corpocracy, and then we haven't figured out a way to add ethics into corporate DNA, because I think that's entirely possible. There is absolutely no reason that we can't build into the corporate infrastructure if we're going to keep looking at them as humans. You know, human beings die. Human beings are responsible for their behavior. Human beings go to jail. None of these things happen to corporations. So it seems like we really, you know, there's a way. And then guess what? AI. What are we going to do about their rights? You know, we have to really start thinking about the world differently, and we have to impose humanity on the things that we create, because humanity is the most important part of what it is that we are, and we're leaving it out. And then we're wondering why we have a miserable, shitty, violent society, is because none of the things that make us human, like kindness, compassion, empathy, collaboration, love, all that stuff, is pussy shit, you know? Because I'm a winner. It's like, come on.
All right, there's a question up, and if you have any other questions, now would be a good time to throw them in, kids. We might have covered this to some degree, but it puts a specific focus on it. Why do we need a federal constitutional amendment instead of the individual laws, example, like Title IX protections? This is the question I get most often when I'm trying to create awareness.
So Title IX is essentially ERA, but it only operates in education. So, and Title VII is essentially ERA, but it only operates in employment. And again, the hierarchy of laws is such that it kind of is a trickle down thing, with the weaker laws being the smaller laws, and as we get down to the Constitution being the bedrock law, the law that's immutable. All other laws and statutes can be changed by a simple majority vote in any state house or in Congress. A constitutional amendment cannot. So they can't just take away rights that they've given you. For instance, look at VAWA. VAWA is a perfect example of something the feminists traded away the ERA for, thinking, well, we're going to, you know, people want to address violence against, let's break it down. Let's do the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, the Violence Against Women Act. Forget ERA being the umbrella. Let's piece it out. That was a terrible idea, but they were also bought off. The feminists were bought off, and then they were given all this money to do the VAWA. What do we see with VAWA? Is every year or 2 years, they try and defund it, and we got to fight to get the money back. Second thing, the case of Morrison versus Virginia Tech. Rachel Morrison, gang raped by the football team at Virginia Tech, took her case to the Supreme Court using VAWA. Guess what? Not having, under VAWA, not having equal protection, legal protection for women, made it such that she got no justice. There was a cap on her damages, all kinds of stuff. VAWA failed her. And again, because there was nothing to point to when it came to just the basic humanity of it. There was nothing there, smoke and mirrors. And that's why I keep trying to tell everybody, it's like, the feminists have built a beautiful architecture on quicksand. And then we wonder why the windows are always janky and the ceiling's falling on us and shit don't work in this house. Because we didn't dig and pour the foundation, which is ERA. You may never see it, but it's always there under you, and we've got nothing under us. All of our laws were built off of the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which is a terrible idea because that was when the word male was introduced to the Constitution for the first time, in order to differentiate that black men could vote, but black women sure couldn't, or black men were citizens, but black women weren't, or whatever they were trying to distinguish men from women to make clear that we were not included. So when in the 70s they started building feminist policy and law off of the Equal Protection Clause, and if you ask Ellie Smeal, president of Feminist Majority, she believes that the Equal Protection Clause protects women. But guess what? Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't. And guess what? Antonin Scalia didn't. So if you've got the two of those agreeing that the 14th Amendment doesn't protect us, please stop using it. And can you get us some basic protection?
If you're a lover of any kind of freedom or human treatment. There are a lot of political enemies to have out there, but there aren't many bigger ones than Scalia, in my personal opinion. I'm just freely editorializing right now, but.
And you know, his son represented Walmart.
I absolutely do know that.
And so that, you know, and Walmart was the largest employment civil rights discrimination case against women. And so the fact that Scalia's son got $50 million and Walmart got let off, you know, because the class was too large, not because there wasn't evidence of discrimination against women, but because there were 1.5 million women, and the court decided, you know what, it's just too many of you people. What is a class action? Isn't that the point? How are women making $8 an hour supposed to fight the largest corporation in the world?
With a class action that the court said there
was out. Too big. You're too big. You're too fat.
Do we have a date for the first Supreme Court yet? Do we need to show up in Boston? Katie wants to know what to do. Katie's ready to go.
Well, the thing is, two things. One is now we're going to go back to First Circuit Court in Boston. Hopefully we'll have a date sometime before Christmas, but we don't know. We're very sad that the Supreme Court just a couple of days ago decided not to take the case. I don't think we should go out in the streets right now. I think we should do a lot of social media, trying to explain to people that women's equality is hanging in the balance in this election and beyond, and that we need to be aware of it. And also, it's not just, people need to understand it's an equal rights amendment, not a women's rights amendment. So there are lots of areas where men suffer discrimination in this country and where things need to be evened out. And certainly in terms of the LGBTQ plus community, they're going after marriage equality. ERA is very important for them as well. Joel says, share the information. People don't know about this, and it's too important. Yeah, just if you can just tell a couple people and ask them to tell a couple people, like the hair commercial. Also, there's a shorter version of our movie called Legalize Equality, because a lot of people can't make it through a 94-minute documentary, which is also very depressing and a downer. But Legalize Equality is only half an hour, and I think it's 99 cents on Vimeo. And then you can like share it with people and say, and then anybody can write to me at info@equalmeansequal.org, and I will answer, yeah, there it is, and I will answer any questions that people have, further legal questions. We also, if you want to read the lawsuit or the motions or the amicus brief or if you're interested in our legal arguments, they're all on our website. You can download them. And we have been having legal panels to discuss this. We did one at the American Constitution Society. I'm doing one at the National Latino Congress on the 24th. Which is 1,000 Latino organizations getting together to move the vote. So we're going to show the movie and talk about it, because Latinas are at 44 cents on the white male dollar. We dropped from 54 to 44. So we really need this.
It's just so everyone's clear, Joel Marshall is Kamala's husband, and he's been dropping links like a madman. So if you probably see it, but I just want to make sure everyone's aware.
Yeah, Joel produced the movie too.
Joel's awesome in his own right. But I just didn't want you to miss what was happening in the chat box, because Joel's double teaming in and helping put links to all the relevant information in there.
Thank you, Remy. Remy says it's been amazing. Thank you. Thank you. I just am so grateful that I have this community that Gunnar provides for us to meet like-minded people and to share our thoughts, and to, especially now when everybody's so isolated, to feel like there's like a home base where, it's so important. The service you're providing, Gunnar, is so important. I don't think people, because we're very delicate flowers. We're artists.
I know. You need to be taken care of.
Need it.
Thank you for that. You're wonderful. I'm going to just sneak in one last question that was on my list, and we're not too overtime, only by a minute. So I'm just going to ask you this. What can a man, even an ally, never truly understand about what it is to live in a female body in America?
The extreme vulnerability. There's something about being a man, and it attracts me so much. It's just like this devil-may-care-ness. There's no potential for any devil-may-care-ness. It's any woman that acts like devil-may-care is putting it on because she better care. You know what I mean? There's always that thing. You know, and also there's always that fear that, or that sensation that you're always being judged with this additional layer. It's like good for a girl or bad for a girl or whatever for something, instead of just being like basic.
Okay. I mean, it's an amazing answer. I just wanted that on the record before we close. So when we close, I always give something, and I always say, because I'm a goober, if we were in person, if it was the before times, it'd probably be a Chattable mug, Chattable t-shirt, like my face on it, like something dumb. But since we're not in person, I can only virtually give you something. So what I've been doing is these are Louise Hay's Power Thought cards. So in my mind, and you can believe it along with me or not, but in my mind, I'm going to sort through, you'll pick one at random, and the universe has decided it's what you needed to hear today. So you can buy into that or not. She's got into it. Did you see her go into that meditation? It's like she's like struck into it. So I'm just going to start flipping, and at any point you say stop.
Stop.
This is the card. I am at peace with my age. Each age has its own special joys and experiences. I am always the perfect age for where I am in my life. And it's what you said earlier. We're all perfect as we are now, where we are now, how we are now. And you have been the perfect guest. Thank you so much. I love and value and admire you so much in this conversation. I hope it's been helpful for people. Down the road, I'm going to have these Chattables archived. So we will keep this moving throughout the world. And, we're going to just make a vow to take care of each other, knowing that that is how we take care of ourselves. Or at least that.
Thank you. Thank you for this
Today. Yeah, absolutely.
Love you a lot.
So if you've enjoyed this, everybody, I've got a couple of more for this series, and then we're going to take a little bit of a break for this year. But next Friday, which I believe is October 23rd, I'm going to be talking to a great friend and mentor, Phyllis Katz, who's an original groundling. You can read more about her bio on my website, www.actorscomedystudio.com. Chattables in the main tab. And then I'll be closing out on Halloween Day with Sarah Beth Shadeen, a senior agent and an excellent friend of mine at BRS Gage Agency. So lovers out there, take care of yourselves, be safe, make smart choices. Thank you for joining us today, and thanks for being my guest, Kamala. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.